Listen up. There's no more excuses. We're empowering those who want the hustle by exposing the status quo.
The days of ordinary are over.
It's time to crush mediocrity and start discovering your greatest potential.
Welcome to the Hustle Nation. To the Hustle Nation.
To the Hustle Nation. To the Hustle Nation.
To the Hustle.
Welcome back to another episode of the Hustle Nation podcast. Today, as always, we've got a real treat. This one's been waiting in the queue for a while. Mr. Preston Rutherford joins us.
Hello.
Preston is co-founder of Chubbies Shorts. You heard that right. The famous brand you're seeing all over, Chubbies, and co-founder of Marathon. Preston, welcome to the show.
Chris, I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us. We've been trying to get you for a long time, mostly our fault with having to ping pong back and forth with all the rescheduling, but appreciate your time. Excited to hear your story. And really interesting. You built an empire over what doesn't seem like a very long time, but as I look at your LinkedIn profile, 13 and a half years plus. I'd love to hear that journey of how you got started.
Yeah. Classic. We were acquired about 10 years into the day. So it's the classic overnight success that takes a decade kind of thing.
Yeah.
Where you basically look like an idiot on the surface until you're the most brilliant person on planet Earth, and nothing changed except for just some external thing that largely you don't have control over. So from a journey perspective, I'm one of 4 co-founders of Chubbies, and the big disclaimer I always give in any kind of these conversations is like all the credit to the team. You know, like founders played a role, but it was a small role because it's all the team. And then myself, I probably played by far the smallest role. So I always like to take that like it's not me, but I can speak to the journey. I can speak to my journey. And we graduated college, and we went to Stanford. So it was like pressure to do cool stuff kind of thing, right? We graduated in 2008, recession, craziness. So like you've got this, I'm going way back, but like you've got this tension between like, I studied my face off. I've got all these expectations, whether they be internal or even external. And I couldn't get a job. Like I couldn't, it was just really hard, right? So humbling. And I tried to do the whole consulting, investment banking, venture capital, whatever route. That's what the cool kids did. Couldn't get any of those jobs. I tried to go to Facebook. Facebook was really young at the time. Couldn't even get a job there. I tried to do some anyways, I failed constantly. And I'm like, what the heck? And the only job I could get was as an unpaid intern at a startup that was founded by someone who lived in the place where I lived. And I was just like a grassroots marketing person. But I had a job. I mean, it wasn't really a job, but there was a place for me to go every day. So that's kind of like backdrop. And the point of bringing that up is it was a stressful time, right? I mean, the economy was falling apart. I mean, people who went through 99, 2000 know what this is like, 89, blah, blah, blah. But that was more of a short-term thing. But like from an economy perspective, like it was tough. And so that was the backdrop, because it continued for years, as you guys know. So then come like 2011, we had jobs, and get to the point where you're about 25, not married, no mortgage. You think you know some stuff, and you're like, my boss is an idiot. I hate these one-on-ones. I don't want to answer to anybody. I think I could do this myself. So I think all 4 of us kind of got to that place. And so, we were like entrepreneurs in search of a company kind of thing. We were just like, what the heck could we do? How could we not work for other people? And, we couldn't do. A guy who lived across the street was the guy who founded Instagram. A guy who lived also across the street founded Snapchat. So it's like, oh man, well, that's kind of crazy. That's not in the cards for us. We studied like poli-sci and urban planning and all this kind of stuff. Tom, one of us was the only one who actually studied engineering, but that just wasn't in the cards. So all of us had some tie to shorter shorts, oddly enough. I played rugby. Tom and Kyle played soccer. Rainer spent a lot of time growing up in the Southeast where shorter shorts are more of a norm. So I think it was Kyle who had an old pair of shorts that just looked awesome, like from it was his uncle's actually that was then somehow made it to him. And then there were also some really cool pictures of his dad and his uncle, like on spring break, when Kyle was when Kyle was a young kid. Just this awesome, epic look of the shorter shorts, the sideburns, the mustache, that look that was just like so cool from that period of time, this nostalgia, which at the time, 2011, it was a stark contrast from the way people were dressing at the time, right? Cool was, how long can my shorts be? How many pockets can I put on my shorts? How many jewels? Like there was this whole bedazzling thing men were doing, like the Affliction thing and the Ed Hardy thing. So it was just like a weird, and then Abercrombie, like the guys with their shirts off, standing at the door, right? Spraying you with cologne and like horrible music and just like frowning upon you if you didn't look a certain way as you are. So that was the other backdrop. So you've got all this stress, you've got all this like men's fashion is just the least welcoming, the most taking themselves seriously kind of situation. And then our tie to shorter shorts. And so all that kind of came together where it was like, okay, there seems like a product gap. There definitely seems like a vibe gap. Like we just kind of felt like no one's talking to us, in the way we want to be spoken. So we're like, well, shoot, let's just see if we can make some shorts and sell a couple. So that was kind of it. And we put some money together, a couple $1,000s each, and went out and tried to find someone to make some shorts. And that person who we paid up front before they made anything took our money and was never to be heard from again. So that was a resounding success. First attempt at any kind of step towards progress in the company, and we're down whatever $10,000. So the second attempt went a little bit better and made a few samples. And the way it first got started was this: every 4th of July we'd go to this place called Lake Tahoe and have a great time. And this time we kind of brought some of the samples. We were wearing them and we had a few others and kind of gave them to a few of our friends. That was when we saw something that was really interesting. And what we saw was complete lack of apathy. So we either had people on polar opposites of the spectrum. One, this is awesome. Where do you get those? This is crazy. I want them. The other is, you guys are the worst, stupidest looking idiots I've ever seen. I hate you. I hate what you're wearing. I hate who you are. But nothing in the middle. No one was like, meh. And while on the surface, it might seem bad that so many people kind of like hated it and thought it was the worst thing in the world. What we felt, and then what we later learned, is that that's exactly what you need, when creating a product, creating a brand. Right? It has to elicit an emotion. It has to be lovable and or hateable. The worst thing is apathy, to be no one to everyone kind of thing. Because then you develop no memory, right? There's no differentiation. There's no rising above the noise. You don't want to be universally hated, of course, right? But as long as you've got the people who love you and hate you, that's awesome. So we saw something that indicated there's something here. We all had our own experiences where I think engendering apathy was something we did not want to be associated with again in the previous stuff that we were working on. For me, I was in like consumer internet. We were trying to make a product, venture backed, cool, whiz bang, a lot of engineers, mobile app, photo sharing. Like this was before Instagram, before Facebook Messenger, before everything. And we were one of the many. And my big lesson there was like, no one cared. No one felt anything about what we were doing. So while the technology was cool, no one cared. Like no one felt, right? So I was like, I never want to do anything like that again. And then similar stories for the other guys. So then those were some of the things where it was like, okay, wow, this is exactly what I'm seeking. And that was kind of like the first thing. And then we just kept trying to make a few more shorts, actually tried to sell them to friends. We would just do the normal 25-year-old thing, go to the park. We lived in San Francisco, go to the park on the weekend, throw the Frisbee around, have a couple of beers. And our friends would be wearing, these bright neon colored short shorts that were just, again, so different from what existed, but we would be having fun, right? It was like an immediate feeling that was like very welcoming, because that was who we were, right? We were just like, come hang out, right? Just like, let's have fun. Let's just be together, like whoever you are. Like that's the vibe of Chubbies. And so it was kind of interesting, like kind of, I wouldn't say viral necessarily, but extremely attractive. And so people would just come up, right, and do the same thing. Love it, hate it. But the people who loved it were like, where do I get them? And at that point, we had maybe 20 pairs of shorts. And we would say, well, I actually have some in my backpack. And this was pre-Venmo. We would then let people try them on. And then they'd be like, yeah, okay, can I just like have them? And if you remember this square card reader that you would stick into your phone. Yeah. I don't even know if that exists anymore. But that's how we would, we'd swipe credit cards. And that was the first revenue. It was effectively door-to-door sales. Wow. And that's how we started. But
at the park while hanging out and having a couple of beers. I love that.
Yeah. I mean, what could be better than that? But yeah, I mean, that's kind of like how the initial stuff got started. And it was just like it wasn't e-commerce to start, it was just kind of like, and I'm so grateful that's the approach that we ended up having to take, because we learned so much. You just learn so much staring someone in the eyes and selling them something, or having them not like what you do. And that you just can't learn by, getting clicks on a Facebook ad kind of thing. Yeah. Not that we didn't do that stuff later on. So anyways, those are some of like the initial things that got us going that maybe I can share.
So I'm intrigued. So you obviously, at some point, you realized you had something. You had created contrast. You had created interest. What was that point, or points maybe even, where you said, okay, well, now we really have something here. Let's get this online. Let's start driving e-commerce and really try to make something of this.
Yeah. I think the next step was, how do we do this e-commerce thing? Shopify was brand new, right? How crazy is that? Yeah. So, we just tried to build an email list. So we kind of started an ambassador program, emailed some fraternity presidents or social managers and said, hey, we have this highly selective process where you need to go through this lengthy application thing, make a video, blah, blah, blah. We had no one, but it was just the classic process. And you have to sign up your whole fraternity to get them on the email list. And then we did other, like not just fraternities, like any club that we could find that where there was a group of people who might be a fit, built the email list, and then just started doing pre-sales. So, effectively crowdfunding, but this is a thing we want to make, and it'll be delivered in 6 months or whatever. Buy it now. And that was kind of how we funded the business, from like a working capital perspective, to actually buy the inventory. And so that's how we got started. And mind you, we still had our full-time jobs. This was a nights and weekends thing. And, that's how we kind of got the ball rolling a little bit. We then had some instances where we missed delivery dates. And when you sell an American flag pair of shorts, it's got to be there before 4th of July. Yeah. And when you miss that, it's catastrophic. At least it feels that way. So had to raise a little bit of money, raised, I don't know, $600K from 60 of our closest friends and family kind of thing, which was a mess from an accounting perspective every year thereafter, from a K1's perspective, blah, blah, blah. But, they were the people who kind of like stuck their neck out. Yeah. And that allowed us to kind of like have some inventory. So it was about, $2 million in annual run rate when we were just like, okay, quit the job. Yeah. We can pay ourselves non-zero, but not much, and work on this full time. And full time meaning we would go to one of our co-founders' apartments and sit at their, small dinner table and just work all day. But that was kind of the beginning. And then we were very fortunate that some of the early growth just was there. This was a time when UGC, this is not even like influencer, just UGC was just becoming a thing, right? And it was so different to post a photo coming from your iPhone, on social media or whatever, versus like the highly produced, Calvin Klein, Ralph Lauren type, right? So just doing all these things that were very different, where it just felt this is a stark contrast to status quo. This was a time when you could reach all of your Facebook following, right? And that about 10% of people would actually engage, right? It was just crazy. Organic virality was possible, not even doing ads. And so we were able to kind of reach a lot of people, grow, build up a community pretty quickly. And, that's kind of like how we got to maybe, I don't know, the first 2 to 5, 6, 7, 8 million.
What was the big turning point in Chubbies? Like, what was it a big retailer? Was it a big e-commerce win? What was it that really took the company from homegrown, viral, grassroots to being like, oh wow, we've kind of arrived?
I love the question, and the answer is nothing. Like, it was just every day try not to go out of business, every day, feeling like you're underperforming. And then you look back, right? And it's like, wow, really cool. But every day you're like, this sucks. I wish I was growing 10 times faster. I'm a horrible manager. That post sucked. This product launch sucked. Like, that's the reality of an entrepreneur. Well, maybe it's just me and us, but like, we were just very hard on ourselves, right? And we, had big goals. And when you're in it, it's hard to just be like, we're crushing it. And then maybe for some brands, there's a real turning point, maybe like a ChatGPT moment. That's what a lot of people have. I wouldn't say that for us necessarily. I mean, it was just, and it wasn't even like this. It was like kind of thing, it was just crazy. And, every fall, winter, we'd almost go out of business, because we're a very seasonal company. Cash flow was always a problem. It was hell on our wives, because they'd be like, well, honey, not paying ourselves for the next 3 months because we're almost out of cash. And, that's more of what it was like. Now, you look back and maybe you really zoom out and, it's just kind of like trying to layer one thing on top of the other kind of thing. But, we really went through what you can call like a brand life cycle where, I was talking about this crazy organic initial growth, not spending a lot, being able to just kind of like rocket ship or hockey stick. And then this like initial scaling phase of, cool, Facebook ads are working. So what was that, 2013 or something like that, right? Where it was working. And it was really awesome because not a lot of people were doing it. And then you've got the classic, diminishing returns curve, leveling off, not knowing why, diagnosing incorrectly, thinking you just need more ads, or my website's got to convert better, not really, owning it, knowing what the core issue is, getting a little too promotional, basically optimizing too much for short-term growth, right? And not investing for the future growth because it doesn't show great short-term ROI. And then I think everyone gets to this like midlife crisis or like come to Jesus moment. Ours was just really bad because I think we were also going through crazy inventory challenges, trying to open some stores, trying to do some of our initial wholesale deals. So inventory was a massive problem. We were also going through a massive change in how we manufacture our product. We started Made in America because we thought that was important, and a lot to be learned there, and it's extremely topical right now. But we had to transition to both domestic and international production, and so we were going through that too. But the product gross margin domestically produced was very low. So when you have these other things that are also hitting your gross margin, you just don't have a lot of room to operate a business. So when you start to see these diminishing returns and you've got inventory, you got to turn into cash, right? There's some things that happen. Mm-hmm. So we really had to come to Jesus moment, and very unfortunately had to fire a large portion of our team and just kind of like do a reset. And this is about 5 years in. So then there's the building back up and just kind of like taking a big step back and saying like, what is success? What am I trying to build here? What truly is equity value driving, right? Is it just top line revenue growth? We learned we were wrong in thinking that was the case. It's like sustainable EBITDA compounding and taking revenue hits in the short term if that's what, things are giving us, but optimizing for EBITDA growth, and learning how to invest in the brand, even if it didn't get that click and that short-term purchase, if I'm talking to like digital marketers kind of thing, given that we're an e-commerce brand. That was a big transition, right? I'd say that was a big transition, kind of like coming out of the valley of the shadow of death kind of thing. And it took years though to kind of figure that out, like 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 1 step forward, 2 steps back. But then at that point, you start to feel the what do you call it? Like just the flywheel kind of thing where it's starting to get more profitable. Business is starting to generate more cash. You can spend more on marketing. You're doing so where you're not really measuring everything by how it drives short term because you know you got to build that long term, fill that top of funnel, generate that future demand. So we started doing the things that we intuited to be right, still using data, of course, always. But hey, this is correct. This is the right way to grow a brand. And then start to have, like retail where there's 85% of all retail sales are done brick and mortar, right? Start reaching out to us, because we're doing the things that, we're not only putting direct response ads out into the world that are just kind of like, buy this product 50% off right now, which kind of comprises the vast majority of ads we see all the time. It was more funny, awesome, memorable video content that just gets you to remember us, love the vibe. Yeah. And that's like catalytic. That's very attractive. And so people started coming inbound saying, hey, carry us. We want your stuff in our aisles kind of thing. And that, being able to then grow in brick and mortar, which is continuing to this day, is, I think, maybe one of the places where it was not really a turning point, but just laying the foundation for what can be continuing scale for decades kind of thing. So anyways, that's like a non-answer, but also kind of trying to answer while also just trying to convey that the whole thing just feels like a mess when you're in it. So if it feels that way, if you're an operator right now, that's how I
think that's so critical. The couple things you shared, everyone talks about that when they view success post-mortem, right? They think of it as linear. They think of it as this one decision that was made and this great strategy or this great whatever. And yet, as you said, there's ups and downs. There were plenty of opportunities for you guys to give up along the way. With that frankly, most people would have, because to your point, like what you just talked through, like there was no like, hey, yeah, we were just hanging out, just watching it roll, right? It was like, no, and then we had this problem, and then we had this problem, and we didn't know how to solve this, and this would take us down, and then we thought we were successful, and then we had to take a step back, and
right.
I think that's so critical because whether that you're doing a startup, you're running a business, any goal you're trying to achieve, we see it so often where people are they quit too soon because they just don't know where the finish line is. And I think that's really critical just in clearly the mindset that you have and your team had of just what's the next problem? Next up, let's just keep solving. If we solve enough problems, let's see what happens.
Yeah. I think as entrepreneurs, I struggle with relishing the wins, just being like, guys, let's just really let this sink in. So that's been a real big development area. And I wouldn't even say I'm good at it now, but because that's like the mindset. It's like, well, okay, like take it. It is what it is. Let's try to fix it. And then when we fix it, well, we've got this other 10 problems. We got to pick the most important one. Let's go try to tackle it. Mm-hmm. That's what it is. It's just like a daily firefight, it's just daily fight. But that's the thing that's awesome, right? Because we control our destiny. And that's the American dream, the global dream, right? That's the dream for everyone to get the opportunity to do, where like you hold this in the palm of your hands and you can take it wherever and it's on you, right? That's like, what a full way to live life. Not that it's easy, but like we all choose our hard and everything's hard. So it's like, do I want hard plus the possibility of, making a lot of people happy, providing a lot of jobs, being challenged every day, learning constantly? Hell yeah, I'll take that hard.
So Preston, you talk a lot about the ups and the downs, and certainly as an entrepreneur, we can all relate if we've been there. But I'm curious, as you couldn't necessarily point to one really big moment. There were probably lots of medium to small size victories along the way. But what were some of those big pitfalls? Looking back, what were maybe one or two of the biggest mistakes you feel like, if I just could have gone back in time, I could have prevented that?
Great question. Now, for me, my realm was more of the marketing, the brand side, the building of demand kind of thing. So that's the only, you probably gathered that, but like, so I'm not able to really speak to the other parts of the business. But in my realm, and this is why I'm working on what I'm working on today, but it was just like this transition from the things that maybe weren't obviously driving clear short-term revenue that you could just measure, but just felt like the right thing to do in the world to just reach a lot of people, get them really pumped on what we're doing, just moving away from that prematurely because we felt once we were a business with employees and quarterly goals and a board that we needed to have more systems and a repeatable growth engine, right? All of these things that we talk about that guide us in these suboptimal directions where we're kind of missing the forest for the trees kind of thing. You know, like I got this specific ROI and that's good. You know, my direct response is good, but we just stopped filling the funnel. So then when we're chasing demand, chasing like performance, and this happens, I think, to every brand, but we start to pull on the wrong levers that optimize for the short term at the expense of the long term, right? You know, promos, discounts, like those being the only ways that we can hit our monthly growth goal. The classic stuff. So I'd say that's like, if I were to do it again, it would, not that I would never discount, but I would just be so cautious in what are the levers that I'm pulling? How am I measuring success? How am I defining success? What is true equity value growth? How am I spending my cash? Like, how do I just make sure that this is a good business that can last 100 years kind of thing? Would just approach it differently. And very basically, I would just do the things that markedly don't just get that click, get that purchase. Because also everyone's doing that, right? So it's just so obvious. But I think that's like a big regret. But, you know, I think going through the pain was the only way we could see how necessary it was to go back kind of like to the first early days, which is what we did after our near-death experience, midlife crisis sort of thing. So it's like one of those things where it's like your biggest pain ends up being your biggest benefit or your biggest helper or whatever. Like if you tend to take whatever, like the abundance perspective or just the fact that life is happening on my behalf or for me, even if it's painful, right? So the brightest days come after the darkest nights. And, you know, that's maybe how I would think about it, because it then allowed Chubbies to grow to a place where now, I mean, it's part of a public company. It just reported, it now became a reportable segment, doing over 100 million a year, solid double-digit EBITDA, solid top-line revenue growth. So it's like a business that is awesome. And again, all credit to the team, but like, I think it's like 6 or 7 years of continued top and bottom line growth, just a good, solid business. And so very fortunate to have been a part of it, but I don't know. And again, amazing product, amazing ops, every other part of the organization. It's not just marketing, whatever, but like from our perspective, you know, I don't know if we would have been able to help the business in the way that has now transpired if we didn't, you know, make those mistakes.
Yeah. It's a great story. I appreciate you sharing that with us. This is a conversation we could probably have for hours and hours. So we're going to have you back. So don't be surprised if I reach out to you again in a few months and say, Preston, come on back to the show. I want to be respectful of your time because I know you got to jump soon here. But before we let you go, take a couple minutes just to tell everyone like what's going on with Chubbies in terms of where can you what's new in terms of products, what's happening, anything else you want to promote?
Oh yeah, I mean, so yeah, Chubbies is still headed up by one of our co-founders, the only one of the four who's still there, Rainer. I mean, he's doing a hell of an awesome job running that business, and then the team that he's put together are just crushing it. So, and the product's better than ever. You can find them in retailers all over the place, and I think they're just like really hitting the stride. It's awesome to see. And then the three other co-founders have gone off and are trying to basically solve the biggest, most painful problem that we had when operating. So one of us, Kyle, was on the ops and finance side. I don't know if you guys ever talk about like ERPs or NetSuite or any of this crazy stuff, but like we went through a NetSuite implementation. It was hell. And so what he's doing now is building like a Shopify native ERP for Shopify brands.
Yeah.
Awesome, right? Really hard problem to solve. But like if you can solve it, big freaking deal. Tom and I, we were on the marketing side. So our biggest thing was measurement. How do you measure the success of your marketing if it doesn't drive short-term click-based, revenue, but builds the brand, does the thing that is the most important thing, gets people to just, allows you to not have to beg and plead to just jam an ad in someone's face in order to get a purchase, basically. That's how I kind of define my. And so we're trying to fix that with software too, with a company called Marathon, which is just basically like, how can you actually measure the revenue component, the future revenue from brand building? So anyways, that's what we're all up to. And it's really hard, right? We're back to square one, back to little babies who don't know what they're doing again. And that's the coolest thing ever.
That's awesome.
Amazing. You're always up to something cool. Where can people connect with you if they want to learn more? They want to find, it's chubbiesshorts.com if they want to go check out everything else.
Chubbiesshorts.com. LinkedIn, I'm Preston Rutherford on LinkedIn. I write posts on marketing, brand building, measuring, how to think about growth and stuff like that. Marathondataco.com, horrible URL, but it's the only one available and we're cheap. I was mentioning it to someone and they're like, so Marathon Dataco. And I was like, yeah, I guess that's a way to think about it. That's how you spell it. So yeah, you can find us there.
All right, Preston, thank you so much. We appreciate your time. For all the audiences out there, thanks for tuning in to another episode. We'll catch you next time. Peace.
Thank you for being part of the Hustle Nation. If you're serious about raising the bar in your personal and professional life and willing to go all in on your success, head over to hustleleaders.com. Here you can get access to our Hustle Productivity ebook, attend our Hustle Masterclass, or challenge yourself to the 30-day Hustle Challenge. Pairing these tools and training with the Hustle Nation podcast will help you advance to a whole new level. Until next time, stay hungry and inspire those around you to hustle.